So I'll go ahead and start recording our lecture for this evening. And tonight's class will have kind of two main components to it. One of them is how to do editing and drafting in Revit. And then the other part of it is visibility control. So if you look on the board behind me, I've written visibility, and then I've written E and VV. So EH, I'll tell you guys what it stands for in just a moment. But the visibility, it will help you when you're working in Revit in many different areas. But tonight, for example, it's going to help us with interior elevations. So when we talk about drafting, I just want to let you know you can do drafting in plan or elevation, but we're just going to happen to talk about it tonight in elevation. And then maybe we'll jump into a floor plan a little bit so you can see that it does still actually apply. Not everything needs to be a BIM model. Okay. Now looking in our 2-bedroom, so go ahead and look at, will you guys help remind me, does everybody, well, I guess, it really doesn't matter because we're going to turn it off. So I would actually like to work in this bathroom right here. So it would be in the north corner of the plan. And I assume that most of us already have some elements on our plan. So raise your hands if you have some annotation, whether it's an interior elevation marker, dimensions, those things like that. Yep, everybody has got some? Okay, good. So we'll start with that, and eventually we'll get into how to draft up an interior elevation so you can kind of see the difference between the two. One of the things that I want to go over tonight, as I mentioned, is visibility. And there's two main categories of visibility. If you've taken AutoCAD, you are probably familiar with freezing layers. So when you freeze a layer, everything turns off, right? And if you don't know AutoCAD, don't even worry about it. But for example, right now on my plan, I'm just going to say that I don't want to see any dimensions. They're in the way. I'm not necessarily working on them. So if you ever want to turn off an entire category of something, you would go into the VV menu. And remember we were here last class, I'm sorry, it feels like a week ago. Do you guys remember what we turned off in visibility last class? Yeah, it was the room separation line. Good. So when we were drawing our room labels, some of them were in an open space, and so we used a room separation line to show where like the big open room separated between like the kitchen and the living room. Now we went into VV and we found it under line work and we turned it off, and it turned off all of them. So here, do you guys see that there's model categories and annotation categories? So under annotation, what I like to do is I like to change this to only show architectural. A lot of things that you don't need kind of go away. And in particular, right now I'm looking for dimensions. So if I unselect this and hit apply, you can see automatically that all of my dimensions turn off of the plan. That entire category has been turned off. Do you guys see that? Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn them back on, and I'm going to do this a little bit differently. Let's say that I want to have all of my dimensions on, but these two happen to be in the way, and I don't want to show that those two particular items. So if that's the case, if you don't want to turn off an entire category, but you just want to turn off individual items, you would use something called element hide. So if I click on this dimension and type in EH, and I click on this dimension and type in EH, those items have now been hidden. Do you guys want to try that? So click on a couple of dimensions and type in EH, and see if you can just get them to disappear from your view. Oh my gosh, I can't remember my shortcut. No, I will figure it out sooner or later. Sorry. Oh my gosh, there we go. Okay, I found it. I feel better now. Sorry. That really scared me. I like having my shortcuts and I'm sad if I forget them. So EH stands for element hide. And then if you type in RH, it stands for reveal hidden. So EH, element hide, and then RH, reveal hidden. So do you guys see that when we typed in RH, now everything that we turned off, which should just really be those two dimensions, are showing up in kind of this magenta color? Do you guys see that, at least on my screen? So now, if I want to bring those dimensions back, I could click on it and type in EU for element unhide and see how it grays out kind of like the rest of my plan that's not hidden. And then I can click on this and also type in EH for element unhide. Okay. And then when you're done, you should just be able to type in RH again and then get out of there. So let's do it again from the top. I was really rusty with the shortcuts, and so I took us through sort of a loop. Let's do it one more time with a completely different example that isn't the dimensions. So I'll let you get out of the dimensions, and then we'll take a look at another category of items. You guys ready for round 2? Okay, I'm going to try this one more time. So let's do 2 examples. Let's say that you're working with a client and you've got these interior elevations set up, but you haven't really gotten to the like living room area yet. So if you just wanted to turn off one interior elevation, can you remind me how we could do that? What's my shortcut up on the board? EH, good. So we'd click on that interior elevation and then type in EH for element hide. Now with this, it all comes in 3 different pieces. So unless I clicked on the wrong thing, I had to do it in several different steps. Let me see if there's one other place I can grab to get everything, but I don't think there is. Nope. Because what Revit is allowing you to do, it's allowing you to turn off different views without affecting the others. So let's say that you just didn't finish one view, you could keep on the other 2. Does that make sense why it would do it separately? That's why it does all of them like that. So now this is gone from view. Now let's take a look up on the board again. How would I see what has been hidden from this plan? RH, good. Reveal hidden. So when I type in RH, all of my plan is essentially grayed out except for the item that has been hidden. Now, before I even bring it back, to get out of this menu, you type in RH again. So just type in RH to get back out. Okay. And then let's do one other thing. Let's grab one other piece of furniture that's in that living area and go ahead and hide that too, just so we have a couple things that are hidden. And remind me again what the shortcut is to hide something. EH, good. Element hide. So for me, I prefer to use the keyboard shortcuts. So for example, right now, if I wanted to show what was hidden, what's that shortcut again? And what does it stand for? Good. If you ever, depending on what you prefer, this little light bulb does the same thing. You guys see that tiny light bulb that I'm pointing to down here? You can see that it's showing reveal hidden elements. So if I click on that, it does the same thing as RH. I prefer RH, and I think it's a little bit faster to get to. So if you ever use the light bulb, you can just kind of click it on and off, or they even have this extra button up here in the upper right-hand corner. So those three things essentially do the same thing. RH, the light bulb, and then RH again, or this X, or turn off the light bulb. They all do the same thing. Let's leave the table off, but bring our elevations back, except for one of them, okay? So leave one of them off, and tell me again the shortcut to bring that back. Yep, and what does it stand for?
Element unhide.
Yep, element unhide, good. So we'll do that one, this one, and one more. It's up to you to decide which views you want to bring back, but just make sure you leave them off, at least one of them off. And then again, use RH or one of the shortcuts to get out of that menu. So using your visibility graphic overrides, especially the EH, that prevents you from unnecessarily deleting stuff. Because tonight's exercise, when we go through drafting, again, you guys will find out that when you delete a drafting view, it gets rid of everything that you've essentially sketched on your plan. And so if you don't want to see it, it might be better to hide it the way we just did and not lose the stuff that you've sketched. Your BIM stuff will always be there, but you can just hide it until you develop it a little bit more. Okay. Now let's go back to the category. And I'm going to have you guys try this on your own. But let's say you're meeting with your client again, and it's really early on in the project, and you have created interior elevations, but they're not to a point where you'd want to put them on a sheet and go through them because you guys are still working on the floor plan. I'm going to give you guys a minute to turn off all of the interior elevations. Okay, I heard some healthy clicks over there. Tell me what shortcut menu you guys went to for that one. Good. And then by default, will it appear in the list that first pops up? Like, would it be here? Yeah, we'd want to go into annotation for that. And for that one, we would want to go to, they should be in order. Would it be elevations? Sorry, guys. Yep, elevations. So I guess elevations does your interior and your exterior at once. And so again, hopefully you guys see the difference between wanting to turn off an entire category versus turning off one item. Okay, Deshina?
What if you, in this case, did select all instances? Is that and you selected one? Is that essentially the same thing?
It is, but yeah, it would really be the same thing, like if you right-clicked and grabbed everything. Because, for example, right now, if we did, I wonder if it's still considered hidden. Let me turn it on. Yeah, it's still considered hidden. So eventually, you'd get to the same place. I just think it's easier to go and deselect it from VV, because then you're controlling that entire category. This is also good if you ever wanted to create a plan or an alternate plan and it maybe turn off all the furniture. So if you wanted to give it to like a flooring company, you could go into VV, and in model categories you can deselect furniture. Okay. And it turns off all of the furniture for you as well. So again, a good way to kind of control some of the components that are shown on your plan. Now, I use this quite a bit when I'm working with clients, just because I think when you do construction drawings, sometimes all of like the notes and things like that get a little busy. So I will do duplicates of my plans just so I can take off some of the notes for them and just have a sheet for us to review together. Okay, so I know that was a lot with visibility and graphic overrides, but what I'd like to do now, I'm going to bring back my elevations so that I can keep working on this view right here. So after all that, we're just going to go ahead and bring them all back. But why don't we, while you're there, if you need to go back in, go ahead and turn off your dimensions. Excuse me. Were you guys able to follow along with that okay? Feel comfortable? Okay, good. So here's why we are combining those two things in one night. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this elevation right here. And down here in bold, you can see that this is called elevation 3C. So go ahead and click on your same interior elevation for the bathroom. Of course, graphically, it's going to be a little bit different. But to make things easier for me, I'm actually going to rename this. I'm going to do MB for master bath. You know, I'm just going to call it master bath. And then that way it'll be easy for me to find here. Everybody got that okay? All right, now that we have that named, what I'd like to do now is let's go back up to our first floor that shows this here. And we can do this one of two ways, I guess. So remember the past couple classes, when we've talked, I have pointed out that all of these individual views are their own view. So when you change things in the view here, it doesn't affect it anywhere else. Like for example, here in the first floor, if I change this to maybe be realistic, it doesn't change it on my 3D view. My 3D view stayed the same, right? So here in my first floor, if I were to grab this tub and do an element hide, I could come back to my interior elevation master bath. Do you see how the tub is still there? So these two views are working independently of one another. I just wanted to point that out. So what we're going to do tonight is we are going to use these 3D components just to help us build a base for our bathroom. But then we're going to go into our interior elevation and we are going to use drafting methods to help put in some of the details, okay? So let's go ahead and go into our interior elevation again. So I'm back here in the master bath, and let's say that our client is really particular about having a circular mirror, not an oval mirror. So I'm going to element hide that, and I'm also going to element hide the vanity. So if you guys have a vanity, if you have a vanity and a countertop, please go ahead and element hide those for me. Everybody got those so far? Okay, good. Now again, I know I'm kind of beating the point here, but if I go back to my first floor, do you see how those elements are still there? So it's really controlled per view. So back in master bath, now we're kind of switching gears. Now we're going to go from, we're going to step back from BIM, and I'm going to teach you guys how to draft some items as well. And to do drafting in Revit, we actually go back to our annotation menu. So we've been here before. We were here last class and we did it with text. But this week we're going to be looking at detail line and regions as well. So off to the side, let's just sketch for a minute. So we're not going to be sketching in our bathroom yet. But click on detail line for me and let's play with lines for just a sec. So when you click on detail line, does this look familiar to you guys? So we've been in sketch mode before, right? But typically we're sketching the perimeter of a staircase, of a roof, floors. We haven't gotten to ceilings yet, but ceilings would be the same. So here you can see we have all of the different tools to sketch, and we can pick from different line types. We can do thin lines, wide lines, path of travel lines, hidden lines. So anything you sketch here, I think this might be out of view of like my crop view, so I might have to change that. Maybe. Where'd you go? There they are. Okay. So because it was out of view, my elevation, or our elevations, automatically cropped the view. So let me turn that back on, and I lied. We're just going to go ahead and put some graffiti on the walls in our bathroom so that we can see what we're doing. So one of the things that I will have you guys kind of practice on your own and with your own time, I'm just going to introduce them to you, but it'll be up to you to kind of explore it. Because I don't really recommend you guys doing a lot of drafting in this class, I like you guys to do everything through BIM or extrusions. You still have some modifying elements like you had in AutoCAD. Even if you haven't had AutoCAD, these modifying items are good to know about. So we've already talked about align. We've talked about move, right? The MV command. So if you wanted to move a line like you did in CAD, you can type in MV and move that. But do you see how it behaves differently? So even though you're drafting in Revit, it's still not going to work like the way it did in CAD. So the commands are different, and then the way the commands function are different as well. We also have offset. So we've seen offset before, but we used offset in roofs. And if you look at the little video, you can see that you can also offset walls in your plan. So this isn't limited to just when we're drafting, but you can use it in your plan too. So walls can be offset, but furniture can't be offset. I don't think windows can be offset. It's mainly walls and then drafting elements. Okay. Copy. I don't think we've really talked about copy before. We've done create similar, but if you ever wanted to do the copy command, you would click on an item and type in CO. So you guys can try this one with me. And with most of these commands, it's going to be essentially waiting for you. If you look at my screen, if you just pause for a minute, it's telling you what to do. And right now it wants you to click to enter the move point. And in CAD, this is known as your base point. So essentially it's wondering, where do you want to pick this up from? So let me do that one more time. CO. I'm going to wait for just a minute so the instruction pops up. Maybe. Well, it's still waiting for my base point, but essentially anywhere we click, do you see that that's where my mouse is holding it? Okay, so since I clicked it on the left, it's grabbing it on the left. Do you guys notice anything that's a little bit different about copy right now than what you may have been used to in CAD? How many times could you guys copy an item in CAD? Yeah. Here though, you can copy more than once Do you see how multiple is here? And there's also this crazy thing called constrain. And the only reason why I'm pointing it out is you won't use it, but then one day you're going to wonder, why is it not letting me move it other than up and down or side to side? And that's because constrain might be on. Okay, but I'm going to turn constrain off if multiple is on. And remember, you can do this with chairs, sofas, walls. It's not limited to lines, but I think we're used to using the copy command in a drafting setting. So move and copy really are the same command, except that copy turns into a stamp if you turn on multiple, and you can just keep copying and copying. And the other thing about copy, it leaves the original where it started, and really move just moves it. But they really are the same command. Moving down the line, we have the mirror command. So if you haven't worked with CAD before, mirror is a great tool to use. And the way that it works is it uses a line of symmetry. And I think the best way to kind of hang out and show it to you, if we watch this little video, what it's trying to do is we're going to take that door and we're going to tell it, mirror it about the center of that wall. And see how it flipped it to the other side? So if I go back in my floor plan, the elevation's not a great example for mirroring, at least not yet. But even this plan, it's kind of small. Let's say I wanted to build another closet right here, this exact same size, right? It doesn't really make sense, but what I'm going to try to do is grab this wall, and I am going to mirror it, and I always use draw access, because what that lets me do is actually sketch out where I want that line to go. And then see how it flipped the whole thing on the other side? It grabbed the wall, it's telling me, oh no, it's running into a window, but you can still use it. And I'm just gonna delete, sorry, I can just trim that out when I'm done. Okay. Another good place to use the mirror command is if you guys were doing like a dining table. So if you did all of your chairs on one side, you can use the mirror command to flip them over to the other side. Okay, let me go back in here. All right. So coming back to the modify menu, we also have rotate. So with any object, and again, this is probably better shown on the floor plan. Let me bring my furniture back for you too. Let's say you wanted to rotate the sofa. You would turn on the rotate command or type in RO. And this gets really confusing because you see this thing spinning around but nothing's happening. What it's asking you is, where do you want the line to rotate from to be? So if I click here, do you see that this is giving me the angle of rotation? So if I do that, it goes ahead and rotates it there. I'm going to do rotate one more time, so RO. This time, if I come horizontally, I can go like this and essentially just flip it entirely. So rotate is something that you'd probably use quite a bit. And let me go back into my modify menu. Trim and TR we've talked about, so I think I can skip past that. And then array we're not doing. And then split element we've already talked about with the walls. But that's some of the modify tools that you might want to use when you're drafting and otherwise. And if you ever are working on a project and there's something that AutoCAD used to do that you're like, how do you do that in Revit? Just ask me. We might be able to do it. Maybe not exact, but I'll see if I can find it for you. Okay. So now let me grab all of these lines. Oh, it's not letting me do select all instances in here. Okay. Let's do this. I'm going to grab them all like this and delete them. Okay. So those were detail lines. And then the other thing that we have are regions. Let me actually leave. I'm going to draw a square using detail lines. And then I'm also going to draw a square using a region. So for those of you who did take AutoCAD, do you remember what boundary hatching was? Okay, so that's essentially what a region is. So if I were to draw a rectangle here, let me do the same thing. Do you see that I'm about to do a filled region with a diagonal crosshatch? Okay, so if I draw one more square and I do the check mark, so this not only does a line, but these are all connected and it gets filled with a pattern. That pattern could be white, it could be gray, it could be black. And you can look at this list and select different things. So sometimes I like this because all of these lines are connected. See how I can just take these and drag them all? On your drafting view, it works pretty similarly, but sometimes they tend to detach. So it's really up to you which ones you want to use. If you want to do a solid hatch, you can. So do this for me. Why don't you draw one rectangle using detail lines, and then go ahead and draw a filled region. Actually, do one filled region right next to it. We'll start with that. And you can just freehand those. That we've all got a couple squares, let's use the copy command. So what I like to do, let me show you what I like to do first. I like to click on it first and then type in CO. And let's make a couple copies of it. Let's do 3 copies total. And then once you get your 3 copies, click on one and just kind of explore what the different hatch patterns are. So you can change them several times. And then the last one, we're going to kind of do our own thing. Jules, I saw your computer spinning and I got scared for a minute. That was a long pause. Okay, when you get to the last one, remember when we were working with walls and we wanted to change the wall type, or even text and we wanted to change the text type? So pretend that this is just like that. Where would we go to start making edits?
Properties editor.
Yeah, so properties, edit type. Does that sound familiar? Okay. And then before we make any changes, what should we do? Duplicate. Good. So with this one, you can just call it test because we're just kind of testing. And really everything is in the graphics. So you can come here and look at the different hatch patterns that are available. There's not a ton, but there's some. What does that mean? And then the other thing that you can also do here too is a lot of times I find myself looking for a gray fill. So I will come here and just make this like a solid gray pattern. It could be as simple as that. I did background and foreground. For the for solid colors, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But if you are doing a pattern, it will make a difference. Were all of you guys able to get kind of a semi-custom one? Okay, if I'm going too fast, yell at me. There's one other thing I want to show you guys in here that I think I can get to work. So here, you know, let me test it. Do you see how on this one right here, I changed it so there's no black outline? Sometimes you want something that's truly solid white without a black border or gray, or you might want even something like this without the line around it. So this will be a little bit different. This isn't in the family where we can edit the type, or sorry, it's not in the properties, but it would be under edit boundary. So go ahead and click on edit boundary for me. And what we want to do is do our, you know, hover tab click to grab all of the lines that we sketched. And then from there, do you see that if we scroll up, there's something called an invisible line? It's in brackets. So your invisible line won't show up at all. So when you apply and do your green check mark to get out of there, when you click off of it, now you're going to have like some funny wood just kind of dangling on the wall. Did you guys get that to work for you? Okay, good. So let's do this together. We did a whole bunch of this kind of random stuff. I'm going to delete some of this stuff now that we've gone through the difference between detail lines and regions. Oops. Okay. And what I'd like to do now is to kind of draft up our own vanity. And I'm just going to start off with something really simple, essentially just like a couple of boxes to start with. And then I'm going to let you guys kind of try to do another bathroom or another space on your own. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and start in my annotation category, and I will do detail lines. And if you ever feel like you can't find the panel, it's always lit up behind stuff back here, your modify lines. And so for this, I'm going to go back to my thin lines. Again, I have a hard time seeing where stuff is. But I'm just going to kind of sketch out where I think it will go. And then, how high should we do the top of the vanity? Like including the counter? About, yeah, 3 feet. Okay. And then just to show you guys some examples, okay, if I knew that I wanted a 2-inch countertop, there's so many ways I can do it. The easiest way would probably be the offset button. I could click on offset and then offset it 2 inches. Just make sure it goes on the right side. But you could also use the copy command and come down 2 inches. You could also do create similar and just kind of start drawing it all over again right underneath. So go ahead and give me a 2-inch counter, whatever way you want to draw it. And let's also do a 4-inch toe kick. Now we all have a little decision to make here. So I want you all to take a look at this line right here. And depending on what you want, you can just make sure that this is a minimum of 18 inches from the center of the toilet to here. So if I were to do mine a minimum of 18, I'm almost there, just a couple, not even an inch off. Or if that takes your vanity to kind of an odd length, you can also decide to change the size of your vanity. It's really up to you to decide. So I can make this 3/6. I have room to make it 4 feet. Everybody here is going to be a little bit different because I don't know what size of a bathtub you put in or what size of a toilet. But go ahead and check those dimensions as well. And then from there, I just want to show you guys maybe 1 or 2 more things. But for the cabinets, depending on the style you're looking for, you can go to detail line, okay, and select rectangle. And I'm going to do maybe a 2-inch offset again. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. So I've got my 2-inch offset, and you can use that 2-inch offset to kind of maybe fill in where your cabinet doors are going to go. If you have this kind of style in mind, you might not. All right, so I used an offset to kind of create a border. Did that make sense? Do you want me to show you that one more time? Okay, so again, I went to detail line, grabbed a rectangle, and made a 2-inch offset. And then from there, if I hit spacebar, do you see how it goes to the inside? Okay. You could do something like that if you wanted to. I'm going to undo it for now. Let me show you guys one other thing. If I know that I want this to be divided evenly into maybe 4, these are obviously not even, but I could use that same dimension to equal trick. There's my equal button, and then it makes all of the doors equal. Okay, so some of the same tricks that we know, just kind of applied differently. I mentioned that this client might want a circular mirror. So if I draw that in, that doesn't look right, but let me sketch that one more time. This doesn't look right either, but I'm just going to go for it. I can use the same offset. Let's just do a 1/2-inch offset this time. Oops. I'm going to grab this and offset this. Not 2 inches, I said a 1/2 inch. And then you can get a round mirror too. And remember, none of this will show up on the floor plan. This is only in an interior elevation view. But anything that you draft in an interior elevation, if you delete that view, all of that will go away. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what happens because I can undo it. But for example, right here, see how I have all this line work? If I go, actually let me save it, and then I'll close it without saving it. If I go to my first floor, if I delete that view, it will say, warning, master bath will be deleted. I'll just say, okay. Now if I go and turn it back on, the only thing that comes back are the BIM elements. See how what I sketched and the mirror I drew up here is gone? So just remember that your BIM elements won't be deleted, but every annotation that you've put in, anything that you have sketched out, those will go away. Okay, now if I undo it, I should be able to bring it back. Maybe. Yeah, there we go. I went back too far. I undid my mirror. But that's an example of what to be careful of. So again, in the future, if you need, rather than turning it off and deleting it, do an element hide and then maybe pull it back in later once you get some more detail in it. Okay? Right, believe it or not. So here, I'm just going to do a quick example. I'm going to go to annotate, and I'm going to pretend to do the, I know this isn't the type of wood paneling that you want, but for example, let me just fill this in right here. And then once this is on here, do you see that by design, lines are just lines and they're not solid? Does that make sense? So to help me out with that, I could do another filled region, and I think I made my test solid white. So now I'm going to do a solid filled region here. Well, okay, it's gray. But do you see that by covering that with the filled region, it made it white? There is one other thing that you have to remember that we haven't gone over, so I'm glad you asked. But with filled regions, do you see that I can actually do that and it's not right anymore? So if you click on an item, a filled region in particular, I can send it to the back essentially. So that's one of, when I work with detail lines, I almost always start out with my object being a solid filled region, and then I kind of sketch on top of it, just so if I put things behind it, it'll kind of show through like that. But again, I don't know how much you want to draft. I really don't draft very often, but those are like the few tricks I have for when I do. Maybe one other thing while I'm in here. So Emily, if you wanted to do the wood paneling, do you see how it's covering up the window?
Yeah.
You could edit the boundary, and remember your boundaries. Let me change this to wireframe. You can still put big holes and gaps as long as they are continuous. So there are ways to do some pop outs. Tracing over this would be a pain, or around this stuff. I'm wondering if I can send it behind that stuff. I'm not sure how that will work. Nope, not hidden line. Weird. This is so funny. I don't know why it thinks that it should come up in front of the toilet and the sink. So I guess you would have to trace around that, but that gets a little crazy. So not perfect. When we do a quick rendering review, I will show you how you can essentially grab a wall and put some texture on it. But the thing that's tricky about it, it's hard to do it on that one wall without affecting all of them.